You're listening to Nurturing Parents, the official podcast of the Radically Inclusive Parenting Project. Here, we hold space for real conversations at the intersections of parenting, spirituality, and justice. With each episode, we bring together experts, everyday parents, and advocates to explore how we can raise the next generation with purpose, intention, and love. So, whether you're tuning in from a quiet moment of rest or in the middle of the beautiful chaos of family life, take a deep breath and let's journey together. Hello, my name is Nettie, and I'm one of the directors for the Radically Inclusive Parenting Project. And I'm so excited to have Cynthia Daniels here with us today. Cynthia is the executive director for the North Texas Transportation Network, which provides travel and relocation grants to North Texas families seeking out-of-state healthcare for trans and gender-expansive youth. So thank you so much, Cynthia, for being here today.
Yeah, thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm super excited to talk more about parenting. And I'm hoping with our conversation, we're not only building a community of support for like-minded parents and caregivers who believe in passing on a spirit of inclusion and compassion to our children. I'm hoping we can offer wisdom and resources to help us in how we are supporting our kids in their day-to-day lives as they grow and develop into their deeper sense of identity. And so I appreciate you being here because you have some unique experiences as a mother. You have a few children of your own, and I know you've learned so much along the way. And so to get us started, I was hoping you could just briefly share a little bit about your parenting journey, and we can go from there just to kind of give our listeners an idea of what you've experienced.
Sure. So I have three kids. They're all adults now. So I feel like I'm kind of entering a new stage of parenting. But I have an almost 24-year-old, a 21-year-old, and then an 18-year-old. So we're about to be empty nesters and start that new phase of life. But yeah, it's been an interesting journey. They don't give you any type of handbook when they send you home with your babies. I would say that our parenting styles have changed a lot over the years as we kind of learn what works and what doesn't work, and just different ways of thinking as well as parents. And there's so many things that I wish I had known when they were younger, but yeah, just trying to be the best parent I can and love my kids unconditionally and help them to be the best adults they can be.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like so many parents resonate with that. We are just doing the best we can.
Mhm.
And it can be so hard in the day-to-day work of being a parent. But sometimes we can stop and we think, who will my kid be when they're an adult? And we're
Mhm.
thinking about like the long-term goal here, you know? So thanks for sharing that. What I'd like to also explore with you is I know one of your children has transitioned, and that's been a journey for you. And I really admire the way you've been a loving mother and parent to your child in that journey. And so, if you're willing to share a little bit about what that experience was like, and perhaps maybe something that was particularly challenging about it, and let us know a little bit more about that experience.
Yeah, so our daughter came out to us as trans in the fall of 2020. She was 17, so she was a senior in high school. It's just a little bit of background for my husband and I as far as like our religious beliefs go. I was raised Southern Baptist. My husband was raised Pentecostal, so very conservative, evangelical. I had always been taught from the church that being LGBTQ was a sin, even though I always questioned it and I never understood, like, I never could in my brain, it just never made sense in my brain, if that makes sense. And so I always questioned what the church was telling me. But I guess it wasn't until my own kid came out that I really had to think more about what that really meant. And so it was a shock for us. Like, we were not expecting anything like that. But both my husband and I had kind of started deconstructing our own religious beliefs and why we believe what we believe and what do we really believe. And so when she came out, it was just a no-brainer. We immediately told her we love her and asked her how we could support her. And then privately, dealt with all the emotions that came along with it. And then I really started doing some research, like what are doctors saying? What are psychologists saying? What are psychiatrists saying? You know, yeah. So it was just a lot of emotions, a lot of questions. We did leave the church that we were attending at the time because of their stance on the LGBTQ community. And we were able to find a very affirming church. And the pastor there, when we met with her, she was able to introduce us to another family that had two trans children and hooked us into a whole community of parents that were affirming for their kids. As far as like challenges go, I guess the biggest challenge that we had was not an acceptance at all, but it was the challenge of a name change and pronoun changes that we were trying to make sure we were using the correct name and the correct pronouns, but she also was not out to anybody else. So even her siblings for a while did not know. It was just my husband and myself. So at home, we had to be very careful around our daughter who was still living at home with us. So it was like a constant going back and forth in our brains. And I think that was the hardest part for both of us was just making sure we were abiding by her wishes to not let other people know, but at the same time, affirming her with her name and her pronouns and kind of letting her guide us in that journey. And that was probably the hardest thing because ultimately she did not come out to extended family for another, I think it was 4 years. So that was really difficult because I had family members wondering if she was okay. She wasn't coming to family functions anymore. So there were a lot of questions from other family members or even friends. Like I had one friend contact me. She's like, I never see you post pictures of
Mm.
your kid anymore. And why is that? I was just like, oh, they're busy with college. And so that was a real challenge. And also trying to really respect her wishes, but at the same time, like knowing that it was hurting our own family, especially our parents. And so there was a little bit of tension during that time period because she was so scared. And as parents, we totally got it. We live in Texas, so there's a lot of hate in this state, especially towards trans people. And I just never knew in talking to friends or family when we finally got the okay, what they were going to say, how they were going to react, how they were going to respond. So I guess another challenge that came along with that was we knew we had to have a plan in place if family or friends were not going to be affirming because our daughter comes first and our relationship with her and loving her came first over everybody else. And so we were ready to make those difficult decisions of having to cut friends out of our lives or even family. So far, we haven't had to cut any family out, thankfully. Everybody has been very accepting and loving. So,
Wow.
yeah.
It's such an honor that you would share that story with us. So thank you for that. And there's so many beautiful parts of the story that I really noticed. One of the things that I noticed is you had your spouse with you to have someone to be in conversation with. And that feels like a gift to have that partner, your life partner, to say, hey, we're going through this together. And what a great way to have support. It must be really hard for parents who don't have a partner to be able to process all of those changes with. And so that's something that I noticed. I also noticed that you were willing to leave a spiritual community that was not affirming of your child and your family situation. And that takes a lot of courage and a lot of confidence. And thankfully, you found another community. So it seems like there was still something in you that knew spirituality was important and you still had a desire for some kind of spiritual support in your life. And thank goodness that you found another community that was so loving and welcoming and helped you meet other parents. who had
Mhm.
a similar experience. And so what a gift. And that's something that I think is so important we continue to emphasize in our time is the power of community. And
Mhm.
we have a dominant culture that promotes highly individualistic lifestyle and pursuing individual success. And really, when we think about what makes us well and what makes us great, is when we have a loving community around us, people who support us. And
Mhm.
so I just think that's incredibly wise that you chose to find another community of support. So you didn't have to journey all by yourselves. And so that was definitely something else that really stood out to me as you shared about your experience. And the next thing that I think about is you said something like allowing your child to be the guide. And that really struck me. And so I'm not sure from your perspective, maybe even how you were raised when you were a child, but I feel like a lot of the, again, dominant way of thinking when it comes to parenthood is that parents are guiding, parents are in charge.
Mhm.
And so if you're willing to go a little deeper into that, what did that feel like? And how did you make that choice to allow your child, in a sense, to have a position of guiding the journey?
Yeah, I guess for us it was a little bit different because she was older. She was 17 going on 18, so she was about to enter into adulthood. But I was raised that my parents pretty much told me what I was going to do and say and believe. And as a young child, I was very obstinate and I was going to do it my way. And I balked that system for years. Somewhere along the way, I think I lost my voice and just a lot of people telling me what I was saying was wrong or whatever. But I don't know. It's just, it was an area that my husband and I were not familiar with. I don't even think we knew any trans people. Or if I did, I didn't know they were trans. It's possible that I knew some and they just didn't ever feel comfortable being themselves or letting me know who they were. So yeah, it was kind of uncharted territory. So we had a lot of questions and she was very open to us asking questions as long as it wasn't too personal or anything like that. But she was the expert
Mm.
in this area. And she was the only one that could tell us how she was feeling and her thoughts and her experiences. And I guess we knew for about a year that something was going on with her. And she had told us that she was trying to figure something out, but couldn't share it with us yet. So we had a little bit of a clue that something was going on. We just didn't know the extent of it, that it actually dealt with who she was as a human being. And so, yeah, I guess that is a little bit different if you think about it from a parent perspective of we're the ones that typically are, okay, you're going to go do this now, or don't do that. And I know a lot of parents who unfortunately do not accept their trans children. And I had a good friend at the time who her kid was going through the exact same thing and about the same age. And she had basically told them that it was not okay to be who they were in her house. And devastatingly, they ultimately left the state and moved out of her house because she didn't feel safe in her own house. And this was after her expressing that she had suicidal thoughts and had come very close to taking her own life because she didn't feel like she could be who she was. So, yeah, I have a hard time understanding when parents don't accept, I guess, because I birthed her. she she's a part of me, and why wouldn't I love who she is and accept who she is?
Mm. Yeah. Wow, it's really real just to name all the different parts that come up with the challenges of transitioning and then being the parent who thought your kid would look a certain way and you're
Mhm.
discovering, oh, this was not what I had in my plan or this is not what I intended. And so it's like this shock hits you. And how do we respond to that when we feel that shock, that disruption to what we thought life was going to look like? And you talked about being a mother who gave birth to your child and you feel so connected. And really, I just see in your story such an example of a love that is so open, a love that is spacious, a love that trusts. There's a lot of trust. And
Mhm.
it's so interesting. This quote is coming up in my mind right now that I heard from the spiritual teacher Richard Rohr, that the opposite of faith is not doubt, it's control.
Mm.
And it's coming up as I kind of process what you're sharing and what does it look like for us as parents to not feel like we have to control certain things in our family's life or our children's lives. How can we open up and know when we need to trust? And not just know when we need to trust, but be willing to experience when we trust. Does it help us feel more at peace? Does it help us feel more at ease to trust? Just some things that I'm thinking about as you share, but I really appreciate the way that you've modeled how to love your child through such an intense journey. And the way you were talking about the timing, you had mentioned for about 4 years at one point,
Mhm.
you were still navigating name change and pronouns within your immediate family, extended family. And so there's just so many parts of the journey that many people don't recognize, right? So yeah, it means a lot that you would share those with us. And one question that's coming up next for me to ask is, was there a certain practice that you can remember? It could be any kind of practice, whether it was like going out for a walk or having a cup of tea or
Mhm.
coffee, or was it devotional time? Was there a certain practice that really supported you in this journey with your child that you felt sustained you, that would help you? It can be any kind of practice. You can think outside the box, but as you reflect, what was maybe a practice that just sustained you in that journey?
That's a great question. Ooh, you may have stumped me. I think just I've always been somebody who loves learning and problem solving, puzzle solving. So to me, this was just another kind of puzzle to figure out. And so I guess just reaching out for resources, books to read. I read a lot of books. I listened to a lot of podcasts already. So it was searching out podcasts that would help me learn more. And I guess as each challenge popped up, it was reaching out to people and just being in community. Relationships are really big for me. So just making sure I was in the right relationships with people sustained me and got us through a lot of things. I've always been one to also question things. So, like when we were trying to figure out the best thing to do now that she was an adult, and how do we get through the back and forth of switching names and pronouns and trying to keep this secret that she was holding, that we were holding from other people. I don't know if is that answering your question. I don't, as far as like a daily practice that I had, I'm really bad at stuff like that. I don't journal. I don't drink coffee. I'm kind of odd in that aspect. But I guess we were in the middle of a pandemic as well. I spent a lot of time sitting out on my back porch in nature and just making sure I was getting those quiet moments away from everything. I learned to cry a lot just to get emotions out.
Yeah.
Because I was going through such a deconstruction of my faith at the time, I was very hesitant about praying or any of that. It was just a really hard time, I guess, in my faith journey because I was really questioning everything I had been taught
Mhm.
in my childhood and youth and even adulthood. So, yeah, just reworking how I think of the divine and deity and spirituality. faith, all of that.
Yeah.
But I would say just like research and podcasts, and I was so hungry to just hear from anybody else who had been through this experience so that I could be the best mom for our daughter that I could be. And I will say, along the journey, she has taught me so much about people, about myself. I have learned so much from her, which is kind of flipped. I spent years teaching her things, and but I would say the past 5 years have been huge for just my knowledge of things, and my love for humanity has just expanded.
That's beautiful. And that was perfect. And I think most adults, most parents would say, yeah, I don't really do a lot of these daily practices. Like it's hard. I'm not that
Mm-hmm.
disciplined. I don't know very many people who are like really good at journaling consistently. I know some people who can journal consistently. I am not
Mm-hmm.
one who can consistently journal. And young children, it feels even more challenging to get journal time in. But that's okay because there's a variety of ways we can connect to our inner selves. And
Mm-hmm.
what you shared was actually really helpful because you talked about looking out for resources. You were studying. And when
Mm-hmm.
we learn and study, that is one way that we are pouring into ourselves. And
It's true.
yeah, and you talked about people again. You said there were people in my life that could support me, and relationships mean a lot to you. And
Mm-hmm.
honestly, that to me is a powerful practice in our lives to seek and nurture relationships that are life-giving for us. That is a huge step of faith and a huge practice that really benefits us. And you also talked about your patio and sitting out and just being with nature, being in quiet. And I think a lot of people do that maybe without consciously realizing that's your practice because
That's yeah.
it is so helpful for us to get into a quiet space where we can breathe in some refreshment, we can breathe in some
Mm-hmm.
rejuvenation, and we find like there's a deeper sustenance, really. So that's how I see our spiritual practices in our daily lives are what gives us that resource and sustenance to keep going with love and with compassion, with
Mm-hmm.
openness. So you were doing those things along your journey as you reflected back to us. And so I just appreciate your honesty. And I think most people would resonate with what you were saying and the ways that you kept going in your journey. And having to navigate all of that during the pandemic is so much.
It was a crazy year.
That is a lot. And I do feel that the stay-at-home orders during the pandemic
Mm-hmm.
really brought to our attention just the importance of home life because we were home all
Mm-hmm.
the time. We're having to do everything from home. And it helped emerge this project to what does it mean to cultivate a home life where our spirits are being nurtured? So it all feels connected in that way. So I appreciate you sharing that so much. And
Yeah.
as we get ready to bring our conversation to a close, what's one piece of advice that you would share with parents today on how they can show up for their kids?
I think just learn how to really listen. And when they tell you who they are, believe them and love them for who they are. And just know that parenting is never going to be perfect. I've made a lot of mistakes. Give yourself grace and just love them and appreciate their individuality. All three of my kids are totally different. I've had to parent all three of them differently. And so there's really not a handbook that anybody could ever give you because each kid is different and needs different things and has different desires. And I think I have to remember that all of my kids are individuals and it's never about what I want or need. It's about what they want and need out of their own life. Yeah, just keep on keeping on. And if you have questions, reach out to people that can help you with those resources. I will say therapy is great. I did start going to counseling in 2020 as well. I would highly recommend it just for somebody else you can bounce problems, ideas, things you can't talk to other people about. It just helps to be able to get it out. And yeah,
Yeah, absolutely. I resonate with that advice very much so. And I thank you for sharing it. I'm pretty sure that it is going to be a huge encouragement to all those who can tune in and hear what you've shared. And I appreciate you saying there isn't a handbook for us as parents. And there's a part of me that's glad because if it was all easy in a handbook, we could just operate like robots.
right.
But our invitation is to love. And when we love, we're really alive. We're
Yeah.
living humans, and our children are living humans. And every day is a new invitation for us, right?
Yep.
So,
Yep.
yeah, it's an honor to be able to have this time with you. And I feel honored to just be parent alongside other parents in this time that we're living in. And I trust that together we're going to see the transformation and the wholeness that we're all striving for. So thank you so much, Cynthia, again for your time. What can people do to support the work that you're doing right now with NTTN?
I guess the biggest way is money. We have a lot of families that are desperately seeking healthcare. And as things change nationally, it's getting harder and harder for them to find that care. They're having to travel. I think the closest state they can go to Texas is New Mexico, Colorado, and they're having to go as far as New York, California, Washington. But if things change on a national level, it will become an out of the country situation. And we do have families that are fleeing the state so that they can take their children to a safe state. So money is very important, but if you have any other resources that you could offer that we could collaborate or partner together with, like we provide financial end of things, but I don't know, like we're open to ideas and collaborating nationally. So if somebody has a way to transport people or house people or provide food or other resources in the states that they're going to, or if there are organizations that you know about in other states that maybe we could refer the families to, that would be great. But yeah, just it's a daily battle right now. We're battling not only our own state and the policies and laws that they're creating, but we're also battling at the national level now too. And it's scary. It's really scary.
Yeah, that's right. And thank you for sharing those ideas. So I'm confident that people who hear about NTTN will be creative on how we can collaborate, support the work, support the families and the youth. And we'll leave all of the contact information for NTTN below so that people can easily click and connect with what you're doing. So
Awesome.
thank you so much, Cynthia. I really appreciate our conversation, and I hope that you have a good rest of your day.
You too. Thank you for having me.
You've been listening to Nurturing Parents, the official podcast of the Radically Inclusive Parenting Project. We hope today's conversation offered you a moment of connection, a spark of insight, or simply a reminder that you are not alone on your parenting journey. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share this episode with someone in your village. Together, we're building a more inclusive future, one conversation and one child at a time. For more information about the Radically Inclusive Parenting Project, visit us at inclusiveparents.org or follow us on social media at radically.inclusive.parents.